and opinions expressed on the Hard Time podcast are of the hosts and guests individually. The Hard Time podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not affiliated with any entity, agency, or department. Human beings have thoughts and feelings that do not necessarily affect the professional performance of their duties.
Ladies and gentlemen, the story you are about to hear is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
An inmate attacked a correctional officer in St. Louis County this week after he refused to go back to his cell.
This is what we have to deal with, inmates like that. Everybody has an opinion, about what goes on and stuff in here, but 9 times out of 10, if anybody that has anything negative to say about a correctional officer, they never even been in the facility, never been inside of the jail.
They have 24/7 to sit there and come up with ways to outsmart them. So they always want to try, but we've got to be proactive.
Still remain professional and do a job.
Officers being praised for their quick actions. Lake County Sheriff says, quote, "They are heroes in my books."
Regular day at the office.
There we go. That's more better. So for you, those of you that don't know me, I'm Jake Motherfucker Welder. Chase, welcome to the live. I was trying to get this on Instagram, but for some reason it removed Instagram from the live. So we will have this. I will release this on Spotify eventually, and we have this on YouTube now. So we have a few different news stories and stuff we can get into. We'll share some Jake jokes. You hear my kids in the background a little bit. I was able to get some soundproofing, so it's a little bit more muted, at least in the background. I got these moving blankets that are they look like a silly suit. They look like it's green with the white stitching. It looks a lot like the suicide gowns or suicide smock, whatever you want to call them, turtle suit. But I have that quadrupled up on the door. So we have a little bit more sound protection now here in the studio. I'm going to get some soundproofing for the door itself on the other side so that we can just incrementally make this a little bit better as we go. I have an update on the Robert Brooks case. So we've talked about Robert Brooks. He was beaten by several COs. It's not a good look. They didn't realize that there were still recording on their body cams, which is no excuse for what they were doing. But of course, there's a spin to this story, but it actually gives us a little bit more background about what happened to Robert Brooks. It says he was transferred to a Marcy prison for his safety. He died after guards beat him there. But the reason that he was transferred is interesting. So Utica, New York state prison officials were warned last month about safety of inmate Robert Brooks. So he was injured after 2 altercations with inmates at Mohawk Correctional Facility. Decided he would be transferred to Marcy Correctional Facility, another state prison about 15 minutes away. So he'd been involved in 2 altercations, at least, that had been reported shortly before his transfer. So was he instigating these? Was he, running his mouth and that causing part of the issue? I'm sure he contributed to it somehow for the officers to act the way they did. Again, we're not excusing what happened to him, but we're just explaining some of the reasons why. Says Brooks did not find safety at Marcy. Multiple corrections officer violently beat him on December 9 in the prison's infirmary, repeatedly punching and kicking him in the groin, abdomen, face, and back. He died hours later at a Utica hospital. State officials have refused to answer many questions about Brooks' final moments, including even the most basic details, such as why he was at Marcy in the first place. But January 14 hearing in the state Supreme Court in Utica provided some answers in the Syracuse courtroom. Post-Standard obtained a transcript of the hearing. The reason why Brooks was transferred to Marcy was revealed by Ryan Paparella, an internal investigator with the State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. Brooks' death is being investigated by the department as well as several federal and state agencies. Paparella identified that officials decided to transfer Brooks due to his safety, in quotes. The altercations with the other inmates left Brooks 43 with a head injury, Paparella said. Brooks' role in the altercations and why they happened have not been publicly disclosed. Paparella's testimony came during a hearing on the potential extreme risk protection order corrections officers Matthew Gallagher has been applying to, who was seen applying leg irons in the handcuffed Brooks. The actions Gallagher and others were recorded on video by body-worn cameras by Gallagher and 3 other corrections officers. Law enforcement can ask a judge to order firearms and other weapons be taken away from a person who is deemed a potential legal threat to themselves or others. So those are red flag laws. So even though this is only seeing the initial days in court, even though this situation hasn't been adjudicated, they're requesting to take his firearms away, which is probably not a surprise to anyone. I'm against red flag laws because it violates people's due process. Michael Whalen, an assistant attorney general in Gallagher's, said Gallagher's behavior speaks to the volume that he believes is okay to be done in a situation. It's not far-fetched to think that to make that logical leap that he would engage in other violent behavior, Whalen said, or in the event that other people are engaging in violent behavior that he would not step in to stop it. Gallagher's attorney, Kevin Lullebrand, said the guard was not violent towards Brooks and is not likely to act violently in the future. Not once has he raised his hand toward that man. Not once. Not once does he strike him. Not once does he do anything that's inappropriate. What he does is what he's supposed to do. Retrieve leg shackles, come back, put leg shackles on and he backs out. Lillibrand added that the confiscating firearms from Gallagher and his wife would leave them defenseless. If there's ever a time in his life that Officer Gallahan needs to be able to defend himself, he said, it's right now because of all that's happened. Gallagher did not have much to say in court. Of course, he's going to allow his attorney to speak. And there's going to be increased threats specifically towards his family. We've seen a lot of situations where people, again, don't look into the details of the case. They just look at somebody to be angry with. So it sounds like he was one of the officers that was there, didn't intervene, but didn't necessarily strike any lethal blows either. When called to the witness stand, he invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination and did not answer any questions. He would not even name his employer, New York State. Gallagher is one of 18 state employees who Governor Kathy Hochul has fired in connection with the beating. 2 have resigned. The beating has provoked outrage across the state. Governor Kathy Hochul visited Marcy Prison last month, naming a new superintendent and announcing a variety of initiatives to improve the state's prison system. A criminal investigation into the beating is being led by Onondaga County State Attorney William Fitzpatrick, who was appointed this month as a special prosecutor in the case. No charges have been filed. An autopsy conducted last month by the medical examiner showed Robert Brooks suffered extensive bruising, a broken nose bone, and bleeding in his genitals, neck, as troopers said in the filing. It also showed concerns for asphyxia due to the compression of his neck as the cause of death, and then the death being due to the actions of another. See if there's anything else. Pertinent here. So it's pretty much the pertinent details. So now we know not all of his injuries were necessarily were during the end of in that final altercation. We also know he was involved in an altercation. His part in that, we don't know. So it's hard to say. And now, possibly due to the not being able to use the HALT Act, now they are transferring people to different facilities. I mean, that's something that we might have done anyways because of the violent nature of, being in a bunch of fights and stuff. There may not be anything going on, that might be what we suggest, is moving him to another. I know we talked a lot about the strike here in our last hard time, but it sounds like there's an update as well with Governor Hochul. Says she proposed to put striking correctional officers back in prisons instead of striking outside the facilities. So this is a proposed deal. This is from 7 News. It's a local news outlet in New York. Says the proposed deal comes after 4 days of mediation between the COs union and the state. It looks to put an end to the illegal work stoppages, which originally started almost 2 weeks ago. Workers want safer working conditions and for the prison system to let up on mandatory overtime, something happening because of staffing shortages. The deal won't get a union endorsement because the union hasn't officially sanctioned the strikes. Instead, each CO will decide whether the deal is good enough for them or not. They have until Saturday to report to work. If they don't, the state says has a list of workers who could face getting arrested. Again, probably just veiled threats from the governor. If she was able to arrest people, she probably would have done that by now. Says the proposal out of the governor's office temporarily suspends some of the aspects of the HALT Act, but doesn't appear to address the disciplinary actions the COs want available to them. It addresses staffing shortages and mandatory overtime. COs won't be disciplined for the illegal walkouts if they go back to working Saturday, though they would still face any fines issued by under the Taylor Law. The state assemblyman Scott Gray says the offer is not enough. The COs are more concerned about safety, staffing, and safety. That is what has been about for them, and they think it didn't go far enough to address their safety. They don't think the agreement goes far enough. They think more needs to be done. I don't know if that's representative of everyone. We'll find out tomorrow. After Governor, spelled with EUR, that's interesting, at Governor Correctional Friday, the strike was alive and well. The corrections officers at Governor are aware of the state proposal, and it says it includes some monetary benefits. They say the proposal misses the mark. It's so dangerous in there. It's not about the money. They don't want any more money. They don't want any more days off. All they're doing is let's make it safe. All that they're doing is let's make it safe for everyone, said retired corrections officer Joe Coffey. So this agreement halts parts of it, tentatively suspends temporarily some of the halt for 90 days, but it doesn't suspend it entirely. So sounds like she's trying to bring an end to it, to them striking outside the facility and not working in the facility, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. It says, Coffey says that it's insufficient and people have misconceptions about solitary confinement. We've said that on the show a lot. Says you have priests that come in to see them, OMH. Mental health has to see them. They talk to neighbors. They play chess in there. They go out to rec an hour a day. They visit the people in the gallery. There's no such thing as isolation, Coffey said. I mean, there's really some really violent people. We have to just separate them from other people. And they're just trying to do the right thing. They keep their head down and do their bid so they can get back with their family. He said, striking officers aren't going on camera. They fear retaliation, especially with the governor saying that some should expect to be arrested if they don't return to work. One officer who wished to remain anonymous said safety is key. We don't care about the money. We just want them to repeal HALT and to leave us the hell alone for striking. As noted, part of the tentative agreement mandates that striking COs return to work by Saturday. If they don't, they face termination. According to two COs. 7 News spoke with those in governor. It says they'll be staying on the picket line until HALT is a thing of the past. So, yeah, they're still not happy. Hello, Shorty. Thanks for joining us. Again, appreciate that, Joe. Chase. A little bit of background noise makes us sound real. Appreciate that. Just trying to bring up the audio quality as high as possible. This was an interesting story. Again, here we're staying in New York. Rival New York City gang members sparked bloody melee in Manhattan courthouse hallway, leaving 2 slashed. So rival gang members sparked a melee in Manhattan courthouse Tuesday, leaving 2 people slashed in a hallway covered in blood. Authorities took 7 suspects in custody, and the out-of-control fight broke out on the 13th floor of the criminal courthouse at 100 Center Street around 12:15 p.m., law enforcement sources said. 2 groups allegedly started jawing at each other outside Part 93 courtroom, which escalated into a shoving match and eventually turned bloody, the sources said. Sorry, there's a lot of pop-ups on this one. One person was brought to the Bellevue Hospital, a 24-year-old man who was slashed in the hand. A courthouse source said one of the injured individuals was slashed by a scalpel, likely made from fiberglass. Photos showed blood spattered on a wall and the floor of the hallway, with feathers from a torn puffer jacket scattered around bloodied napkins. A spokesman for the city court administration said the investigation was ongoing. At approximately 12:15 on Tuesday, January 28th, in a hallway of the Supreme Court criminal term at 100 Center Street, 2 individuals sustained a slashing injury. New York State officers immediately responded to the incident, facilitated transport to the local hospital, and initiated an investigation, a spokesperson said in a statement. Court officers took 7 individuals into custody and recovered 2 sharp objects. So I know this isn't completely completely jail related, but it's in a lot of cases the courthouses will be adjacent to a jail, and you'll definitely have, whether it is or not, you'll have COs a lot of times doing transports for people in and out of the courthouse. And then on top of that, this was gang violence, which is something that we deal with a lot, but it was also improvised weapons. So people using improvised weapons, scalpel-like things made out of fiberglass, so that they're not detected by a metal detector, so that they can bring them into the courthouse just for this type of thing, so that they can settle a score. If something comes up, they're not going to go defenseless into a courtroom. They're going to sneak some kind of weapon inside the courtroom. So other than doing, super thorough pat searches and stuff, there's not really much you can do for that. We've said before that, visual pat down is something that we do a lot. But I mean, they should be able to, if they were able to do stop and frisks, they could probably take care of this if they, were quote unquote profiling certain people. You can tell by body language, by their clothing, their colors that they're wearing and stuff. You may, and a lot of times, I think I told this story before on Hard Time, they'll be known to the officers that are working at the jail. When I went to do one transport that was out of my local jurisdiction, we just put the inmate in a cell. They had him on a camera. So they were like showing me around the facility while we could monitor him. And they're like, oh, yeah, this person's a chomo. This person's having an affair with that person. This person's getting divorced. They had a lot of different insight into what was going on in the courtroom and the different people. So it's a little harder in a place like New York City. You have, millions of people in the city, but small town communities for sure, they know what's going on. So it's an interesting story. Not enough to do like a full episode on. Maybe I'll share some of the photos so people can see what was going on there. And if you guys have any questions for me or whatever during the live, I know there's just a couple of you because this was kind of a spur of the moment thing, but feel free to hit me with any if you got some. Here's a positive story. Again, staying in New York. Rikers Island corrections officers' swift actions training save choking toddler. The officers Barbosa Jr., Stanislaus, and McQueen, that's a mouthful, Stanislaus and McQueen are shining examples of what it means to be a DOC hero, New York DOC commissioner said, adding training averted a tragedy. So this is from Corrections 1. New York, a toddler's visit to Rikers Island. Why the hell would you take a toddler to Rikers Island? That's what I would like to know. That's the last place that I would want to take a toddler, but that being neither here nor there, took a terrifying turn when he started choking on a potato chip, prompting corrections officers to jump into action. During a visit at Robert N. Davern Center on September 8th, corrections officers Barbosa Jr., Stanislaus, and McQueen noticed 1-year-old struggling to breathe, bent over and unable to cry, the New York Department of Corrections said. Officer Stanislaus immediately performed the Heimlich maneuver, while McQueen called for medical assistance. Barbosa Jr., an 18-year veteran, told the New York Post that he heard an alert over the radio, and that's when he jumped in and started performing CPR. CPR wasn't working, so Barbosa Jr. said he put on gloves and performed finger sweeps. Recalling the tense moments, Barbosa Jr. told the New York Post that the toddler's abdomen was getting distended. That's when he pushed his finger further down the child's throat. I felt the chip move, and then we instructed Mom to give him water. We continued to comfort both the baby and his mom until EMS arrived. Explained Barbosa Jr. We want everyone, our partners, ourselves, and the visitors and persons in custody to remain safe every day. We come to work, or every day when we come to work, that's what we do every day, and we're happy the baby is okay. Working together with the child's mother, the three officials managed to clear the baby's airway before New York DOC physicians and FDNY EMS arrived to assist. This department trains us in CPR and to be ready at all times to help when emergencies happen, whether it's at work or on the streets. So we were trained for this, said Stanislaus, a 14-year veteran. It was scary. The baby's lips turned blue, but we used our training to help him. McQueen, who has 17 years of service, added, when we're working on the visits floor, we're security minded. We're always make sure that everyone is safe. When we see something wrong, whether it's contraband or a medical emergency like this one, we immediately do our jobs and help. Okay, so if maybe this was a visit to someone at Rikers in the visiting room, that would make more sense. RDNC acting warden Chester praised three officers and their outstanding response during the emergency and expressed his pride in having such dedicated correctional professionals on his team. We're extremely grateful that our officers were able to save the child's life. Their training and their experience kicked right in, and they were able to work as a team to help him and his mother. Chester added, we call our officers heroes because that's what they are, heroes. They are dealing with the public and persons in custody every day, and they do as required to keep us all safe. Corrections Commissioner Linnell Magningly Liddy took to X and commented to commend the officers for their actions. Officers Barbosa Jr., Stanislaus, and McQueen are shining examples of what it means to be a DOC hero. They acted quickly, relied on their training, and averted a terrible tragedy. I will be forever grateful for their heroic actions that day, and as will this beautiful family, Magningly Liddy said. She's also thankful for the fact that there was no more attached paperwork to that situation. Again, I'll probably share, here's the pictures of the officers. I'll share some of this stuff. So I'll eventually learn how to add it here to StreamYard, but just haven't quite gotten there yet. All right. Oh, that one says he choked on a Dorito. Oh, this was something that happened a little while ago that I had in my short stories. Embodying selflessness and courage, Super Bowl 69 recognizes New Orleans first responders. Thanks, David J., for joining us. Maybe I'll share a couple little jokes before we do this story then. Why did the gangster have to keep seeing the eye doctor? Because he had glaucoma. Why does the Little Mermaid wear seashells? because she can't fit D shells. Here you go, Shorty. Why do white girls come in odd numbers? Because they can't even. Okay, I'll share a couple of more of those after we get through our stories. I don't know if I have quite enough material here for an hour, but we'll do the best we can. Louisiana Department of Corrections officers stood alongside police, fire, and EMS personnel in a powerful pregame tribute honoring those who responded to the deadly Bourbon Street attack. So here again, you have corrections officers being included in responding to a situation outside of work. New Orleans, Super Bowl 69 became a moment of reflection Sunday as first responders responded to the deadly New Year's Day terror attack on Bourbon Street were honored in a powerful on-field tribute. The ceremony paid tribute to 14 victims killed by a man claiming allegiance to Islamic State, who drove a truck into a crowd celebrating the early hours of January 1st. More than 30 others were injured, including 2 officers, before the suspect was killed in a shootout with police. Before the coin toss for the Super Bowl, former Saints defensive end Cameron Jordan introduced first responders and family members of the victims. He said, quote, "On January 1st, our cherished French Quarter experienced an attack that shook us to the core. In the face of unspeakable loss, we mourn 14 lives that were taken too soon. Together we come together not only to remember, but to celebrate their lives and honor the brave heroes who rushed towards danger, embodying selflessness and courage. First responders from the New Orleans Police Department, Emergency Services, Fire Department, Louisiana Department of Corrections, and Louisiana State Police stood together, representing those who responded in the chaos of that night. Each first responder had a photo of 14 people who were lost in the attack. Among those honored were the honorary Super Bowl captains. Jordan also took a moment to acknowledge those affected by the recent tragedy. We are a resilient community, and we are filled with gratitude for the incredible support we have received from around the world, he said. Tonight, we also extend our hearts to those who were impacted by the floods in North Carolina, the fires in California, and the families grieving the loss of loved ones in the plane crashes in D.C. and Philadelphia. It also brings out in this article that President Trump meets with New Orleans first responders before the Super Bowl. Before taking a seat in Saints owner Gail Benson's suite to watch the pregame ceremonies, President Donald Trump met with first responders and families of victims of the New Year's Day attack. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell was also in attendance. Football is America's most popular sport for good reason. It fosters a sense of national unity, bringing families, friends, and fans together and strengthening communities. This annual tradition transcends our differences and personifies our shared patriotic values of family, faith, and freedom, heroically defended by our military service members, law enforcement officers, and first responders. We value their devotion to protecting our great nation and salute their selfless service, Trump said in a statement. So it was nice to see corrections officers included in that. They were included in the response. People who were they're just working, not working. They were just in the French Quarter. Happened to be among the crowds and jumped in. That's a very scary style of attack. It's something that Islamic State has been promoting, that they were going to take advantage of the weaknesses of law enforcement, because law enforcement, if someone says, okay, it doesn't matter how many people they've killed, if they say, okay, I give up, they're going to, try to take them into custody. But these terrorists aren't going to stop. They're going to clack off a vest. They're going to, shoot off IEDs that they have planted, which thankfully the ones that he had planted didn't go off. They're going to stop just long enough for someone to draw people in, and then continue to fight. So it's a very scary method that they've encouraged and they've been training people to do. So if you have lone wolves like that who are American citizens who are doing these things, or people that have come over into our country, but corrections officers are ready to respond if something happens in public. I already have standing orders with my wife what to do, first of all, to make sure that my family is safe, but also to be able to be of assistance if possible in, either neutralizing a threat or getting people out of there. Whatever the case is, rendering first aid. I carry not just things to put holes in people, but things to plug holes in people with me on a daily basis. So, things like chest seals and tourniquets and things like that. Bandages to pack wounds, those types of things. So there's a lot of things in a very scary world that we're dealing with. But if there's anyone that's a corrections officer that's involved, they do have specialized training they can fall back on, along with other first responders. So let's see. This was an interesting one. State prisoners protest unwanted visitors. So this is back from November 11th. This is on radio WVTF.org. It says black vultures make a fearsome sound, and they're big, with wingspans up to 7 feet. Their droppings can kill plants below, ruin paint on your vehicle, or ruin your day by getting hit with bird shit. And prisoners at the Deerfield Correction Center worry that they might spread disease. At the Wildlife Center of Virginia, Connor Gillespie says that's unlikely. There's not a big risk of disease transmission between avian species and humans, especially outdoors in a well-ventilated area, he says. Officials at the prison have warned inmates to stop feeding stray cats and birds during recreation time, believing that will prompt the vultures to leave. But at Virginia Tech, professor of wildlife science Jim Parkhurst doubts that will make a difference. Turkey vultures might be responsive if there was a considerable amount of food put out for cats, but that alone would not be an attractant for the black vultures, he contends. He suggests using fireworks, but just before dusk, as the birds are coming in to roost, but the timing must be right. If the birds have already landed, loud noises could do more harm than good. When they get scared or frightened on the roost, they vomit, and that could create some pretty stinky habitat, he explains. It's not illegal to shoot turkey vultures, but you can get a federal permit to go after as many as you want, as many as 5 black vultures, because Professor Parker says they have begun to threaten newborn livestock in the field. The turkey vultures are basically scavengers, so they're going to look for dead animals or animals that are very close to death, Parker says. Black vultures in recent decades have become predatory. They are very effective at the sort of ganging up on the prey animal that they are intent on bringing down. At the Wildlife Center of Virginia, Connor Gillespie is glad that protections are in place for vultures. He also notes that they have an important public service, but they're not popular with people. So They serve an important service, whereas inmates do not. Keep the cats around, keeps the rats down. That's true. One other thing that they don't mention is that that's a popular way to bring contraband into a prison is to stuff it into dead animals, dead birds, dead rats, dead mice, just any small rodent or avian creature. They actually stuff the drugs into the carcass and then throw it over the fence because COs are less likely to grab a half-rotted corpse, whereas inmates will do just about anything to get high. So they may have contributed a little bit to their avian problem. We do have large turkey vultures around here. I do work at a juvenile jail, so maybe some of our smaller inmates, we would have to be concerned with them getting carried off by these vultures. But luckily, I live near a fireworks stand, so I can always do something like that to take care of them if that's what they want. Yeah, the tennis balls with drugs. That's another method that's been used, but there's not much that a CO wouldn't do to go inspect a tennis ball. I mean, if they did want to do the extra walking or paperwork, I suppose, but it's not much about a tennis ball that will be repulsive or objectionable to a CO double checking that it doesn't have drugs in it. But drones also, they use drones, and then they have a lot of drones now have a feature where you can drop a payload, so they can just drop drugs directly. That's another thing. But again, searching the grounds and searching inmates when they come back from rec, when they come back from the kitchen, when they come back from places where they could potentially get paraphernalia or weapons and things of that sort. If anywhere where they can deal with the public or deal with outside people is going to be high risk for that sort of behavior. I promise if I shoot off fireworks, I'll film it. At the Wildlife Center of Virginia, Connor Gillespie is glad such protections are in place for vultures. We already mentioned that. They often think of them as sort of gross animals, but they are actually sort of nature's cleanup crew. And they're helping keep the environment cleaner by removing carcasses that they find and making the environment a little cleaner for us. So it's actually great to have them around. And he worries that some vultures are poisoned when hunters field dress deer and other animals, leaving some remains in the fields and forests. If they use lead ammunition on the carcass, which if they're using shotguns, usually it's steel shot. So, and they have steel slugs, so that's not as big a deal. If it's a rifle, I suppose there are areas. When I was in New York, they didn't allow rifles until just before I left the state, but that is a possibility. So when scavengers come along, they think that's the perfect food source, but lead poisoning does serious damage to their nervous system and can kill. Ironically, the birds known best for eating dead things are uneasy around bodies of their own. And Parker says that creates another way to displace of human vultures, hanging a deceased one from their roost. So could always go cartel on them and hang a couple carcasses upside down on the fence to discourage them from coming in the yard, I suppose. It literally freaks out the rest of the flock and they abandon the area. We have now been able to create some sort of very lifelike effigies that are used and also in moving roosts out of the residential areas. God forbid we use an actual bird. That would be just terrible. He warns that communities planning to do so should be careful not to create bigger problems for others. More than 1,000 birds have been known to roost for the Radford near the Radford Arsenal, for example. There was a plantation of a pine section of river on the Arsenal right next to the river, and the operator of the facility conducted a timber harvest, so their habitat suddenly disappeared. The roost broke up. Part of it ended up downtown in Radford. Smaller groups appeared in residential areas, and it created a lot of grief for folks, Parkhurst recalls. Vultures still like the area, and the local population is known to swell from time to time at this time of year, as birds from northern areas fly south for the winter. So that was brought to us by Sandy Hausman of Radio Charlottesville. Excuse me 1 second while I put this cat out in effigy. I'll be right back. It's not an episode if there's not some cat noise or something going on. That was Church, a completely black cat. So I tried to clear the area of all animals, but I couldn't quite see him. So see if I have any other old inactive tabs here. That's kind of interesting. Mysterious illnesses in New York. Okay, here's a profile. We'll do one more of these at least. So, hometown hero, Montgomery Jail Corrections Officer Sonia Rodifer. Montgomery County, Ohio. This is from WKEF, Dayton, Ohio's 24/7 news network, just in case you were wondering. Sonia Rodifer has been a corrections officer in the Montgomery County Jail for the last 17 years and was nominated as a hometown hero by the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. Officer Rodifer's kind nature is made clear after just 2 minutes of spending time with her. As a corrections officer, she's in charge of ensuring the care and welfare of inmates confined in the jail. However, she does more than just that by leading inmates to sobriety, helping them keep a positive focus. We have the same rules every day. Everybody gets to be more respectful in here. We don't yell, we don't cuss, we just treat each other with respect, said Officer Rodifer. Her day-to-day nature and personality makes her a hero in itself, but recently Rodifer was praised by the parents of an inmate after their child, who is an adult, I might add, a fucking inmate, as we say on this show, had a medical response while incarcerated. So she had a seizure in the back of the dorm, and one of the ladies yelled for me because they caught her and she was being overwhelmed by other inmates. So when we called for units, everybody came, and then she had the adverse effects to everything, said Officer Rodifer. So when we came back a couple of days later, she had another crisis. So we carried her back again, and somebody got to come to talk to help get her out. Sorry, this article has terrible spelling and English. The inmates' parents say that the corrections officer Rodifer was so wonderful, and they wished everyone understood how much the jail, especially Rodford, does to help those who are incarcerated. They know I care. They know that if they need medical or mental help, that we're going to advocate for them, said Officer Rodford. To put it simply, I just like helping people, said Officer Rodford. So there certainly is that aspect to it. There are situations where you're able to work with people and help encourage them to do better. But yeah, there's definitely a line that they don't mention there. A lot of times when inmates have fake seizures, when they don't have actual neurological problems going on, they're doing it to avoid going to jail. They're doing it to avoid going down to the SHU or something. They don't want to deal with a room restriction or being sent to administrative punishment. They would rather go to the infirmary, so they do things like that. So it's nice that she was able to help out in this situation. It was good that she was able to respond again to a actual medical problem. But a lot of times when these things come up, they're not. It's a manipulation from inmates. It's not an actual situation. So I actually had a seizure in the jail once and had a CO come to my aid. So they were able to finally give me some medical attention. So that was a very unfortunate situation, but I'm better now under medication and different things, been able to manage it. So been seizure free for a long time. All right, we'll do one more here. We're 52 minutes in. Upstate Correctional Facility placed under lockdown following recent chemical exposure incidents. There was a third incident Tuesday where several people had to be taken to the hospital. Malone, New York. The New York Department of Corrections and Community Supervision, a DOCCS, had placed Upstate Correctional Facility Malone under lockdown effective Wednesday morning. The lockdown comes after several recent incidents of chemical exposure at the facility this month, where people had to be taken to the hospital and some instances were given Narcan. The New York State Corrections Officers, the Police Benefits and Police Benevolent Association, is calling the Department of Corrections to take immediate action to address the recent rash of incidents of staff becoming sick after coming in contact with inmates who have apparently overdosed on drugs and combating contraband coming into facilities. So this is a big thing that we worry about when I worked in intake, in booking. I was made sure to wear full sleeves because even if somebody gets cleared from the hospital, or if they come in and they haven't been cleared and they have an overdose. We've had that before where people have overdosed just coming in because they've ingested something in the back of the cop car, or that's usually what happens. Wearing full sleeves is not a perfect solution, but it's better than nothing. And wearing gloves whenever you're dealing with inmates, especially when you're dealing with inmates at intake. The union said that on Wednesday, January 22nd, an intoxicated inmate at the Upstate Correctional Facility was brought to the infirmary after being involved in a fight with another inmate. Officials said that Narcan was administered to the inmate after he was taken to Alice Hyde Medical Center. After the incident was over, 11 officers, 8 registered nurses, and another person began experiencing symptoms, including dizziness, vomiting, and high blood pressure and fainting. They were all taken to Alice Hyde Medical Center. 2 nurses were administered Narcan. So that's pretty extreme event for exposure, to have that many people exposed for a single event. That's crazy. On Saturday, January 25th, they said that 3 officers and 2 registered nurses were taken to the hospital after responding to a medical emergency in the infirmary at Upstate Correctional Facility for an inmate who was unresponsive. The responding officers and nurses began experiencing symptoms of lightheadedness and dizziness after treating the inmate. An officer and nurse needed to be administered Narcan after they became unresponsive. Again, that's a lot for being in close quarters with an inmate. I don't know if it was something inhaled or more likely something transmitted via the skin if they were just picked up the inmate because they were unresponsive or were trying to give CPR without proper barriers and maybe even with barriers. I'm not sure. I'm not a licensed medical professional, but all those people were affected. Then on Tuesday, January 28th, the union said at least 4 staff members at Upstate Correctional Facility were sent to the hospital after being exposed to something inside the prison. They said that Narcan was used at the hospital after some reported symptoms of lightheadedness and vomiting. Officials said that some staff members don't know what happened. So they don't even remember, they don't know where their exposure was. So that's even scarier. The concern with the alarming number of incidents occurring, coupled with the fact that hazmat teams and law enforcement officials have been unable to identify the substances responsible for the exposure, underscores the need for improved drug detection methods within facilities and enhanced safety protocols, said Chris Summers, president of the Benevolent Association. It's clear with the number of incidents of unresponsive inmates in prisons across the state, dangerous drugs like synthetic marijuana, K2, and fentanyl are still getting into the prisons at an alarming rate. Contraband seized in 2024 numbered 4,739, a 55% increase from 2022, despite having a secure vendor program that was supposed to reduce drugs and weapons from getting into the facility. The problem being that you're still relying on people to vend, to bring things in, to give things to the inmates. So they're going to be doing possibly more than just what's on the commissary list. That makes it extremely dangerous for staff who must interact with inmates daily and immediately respond to medical emergencies with no knowledge of the types of drugs they are encountering. DOCCS says the lockdown in Upstate Correctional Facility is expected to last several days as they perform a full facility search, which includes drug sniffing canines from the Office of Special Investigations. Visitation is suspended during the lockdown, and they released a statement that just basically reiterates what we've already said. So, again, scary situation, something that corrections officers deal with a lot. But yeah, do whatever you can to limit your exposure. You're not going to be able to bring your risk factor down to 0, but you can do what you can to try to protect yourself, those you work with, and your families. So, do a couple more Jake jokes before we go. We're coming just up on an hour now. What does a peanut say when it sneezes? Cashew. It's weird telling jokes out into the ether. I'll use this one because it's not a question. I was on a plane and the air hostess came up to me and said, "Would you care for an orange juice?" I replied, "If it needed me to." This is someone's account. It says, I refuse to believe I was gay and dyslexic. I was in Daniel. Oh my. I'll save that one. Did I tell you that I injured myself while measuring radio frequency? It still hurts. What did the river say when it saw beavers approaching? Well, I'll be damned. Okay, guys, I working a little bit extra next week, so I don't know if I'll be able to do a live next week or not. We'll see if I can squeeze one in. Thank you for Shorty Rides persisting and getting me to do one of these. I'll try to do some more, just giving you guys some more content for you guys to listen to, especially people like Shorty who've listened to everything twice. So try to give you some of these shorter stories and stuff. We appreciate you. We'll catch you back on Monday with a classic episode of Hard Time. And then on Friday, we'll have some new video content for you guys. So David going back to work next week as well. So yeah, I'm working. I'll work Wednesday night. I'll get off at 10:30, and then I have to be back at 3:30. So I have like a 5-hour turnaround to work a 12-hour shift. So Thursday is going to be pretty hectic for me. And then sometime on Thursday or Friday, hopefully, we'll be recording a fresh episode of Hard Time. So I'll prioritize that. Maybe more people showed up for this than I expected for a Saturday. So maybe we can do another Saturday live next week. So we'll play it by ear. But appreciate you guys all coming on. Everybody who's working behind the walls, stay safe. Thank you for everyone else for your support. And we'll catch you on the next one.